Well, Cato the Younger's most famous speech in the Roman Senate is not actually one of his speeches at all. It's an imaginary speech that Shakespeare put into the mouth of his character Brutus. And I know what you're thinking. We don't have many of his writings, but he was so well known in his day that historians like Cicero wrote extensively about him and his ideas. So thanks to those ancient sources, we can get a sense of what Cato was like and why he matters for our series on Julius Caesar. We only have fragments of Cato's speech from this campaign, but scholars think it's pretty representative of his general political style. If he were running for president today, he'd probably have one of those websites that lists his net worth and shows you where he stands on issues of public policy. He had a freedman named Hortensius, who he brought with him from his governorship and who served as secretary to the consuls and helped them draft their speeches. We don't know much about him, but given that a slave who becomes a secretary might have had a chance to become a senator. That title belongs to a man named Gaius Cassius Longinus, who was Caesar's half-brother and had been adopted into the Julian family. So when Metellus Nepos needed help to finish subduing the Third Mithridatic War in the east, Cato argued against sending any more troops to help him. Metellus ended up winning without any Roman help, and Cato congratulated him, saying it was all thanks to divine providence, because only God could save the Roman people. His disciples followed Stoic principles, practicing self-control and seeking virtue and living according to nature. The idea was that they would be free from fear and desire and thus free to lead the best life possible. Cato taught this school for free and openly, so it's likely that his students came from the equestrian class, the same as he did. There's no evidence that any of them rose to prominence, though. Cato was a private man, so he didn't cultivate powerful friends. He didn't curry favor with the emperors, and he never gave pleasing speeches to flatter anybody. He was a no-nonsense sort who tried to do what he thought was right, and he expected others to do the same. It was bad enough to fight wars in Italy or even nearby North Africa. But Cato thought that fighting in Asia Minor was ridiculous. Caesar had seized absolute power, yes, but he'd also been elected by the people. He embodies the ideal of the citizen statesman. He took his responsibilities seriously, he was frugal and sincere, and he spent his life trying to defend Rome from the dangers of ambition and luxury and cultural contamination. It's hard not to admire a man like that, even if you disagree with everything he stands for. Could the Romans be so easily manipulated? Cato must have thought so. He and his friend Cassius started planning their response, but before either of them could do anything, Caesar crossed the Rubicon and marched on the city. Cato and his friends had no choice but to flee. Cato went to Utica in North Africa, where he'd formerly been governor. From there, he led resistance forces against Caesar and Mark Antony, but they lost. Soon after, Cato and Cassius committed suicide. The same went for Hispania, too. When Rome's allies there revolted in 73 BC, Cato didn't think they should be appeased. The rebels should be crushed, he said, and slaves who fled to cities should be sent back to their owners. And the rise of the Roman Empire. Check out our series on Augustus, starting with episode 1, The Boy Who Would Be Emperor. You can watch the first episode right here. Hit like and subscribe and leave us a comment to let us know what you think. See you next time. Is it not disgraceful, he asked rhetorically, that we are unable to prevent slaves from rising in revolt? And that when generals win victories, they are applauded for returning runaway slaves to their masters? As far as Cato was concerned, it was pointless to try and bring all these far-flung territories under the dominion of Rome. You can't rule over peoples who are so far away, he said, especially when they aren't even Roman. Instead, Rome should focus on being a great city and staying out of other people's business. Like Cato, Cassius had held the consulship, but he also had friends in high places, including Pompey, who was married to his sister Julia. He wanted Rome to stay pure, so he tried to keep Greek influence to a minimum. He hated Greek plays and poetry and philosophy. Even Greek clothes seemed strange to him. He wore plain robes that were the traditional color of a Roman magistrate, white. Even his food was simple, sticking mostly to things like beans and bread. And he didn't drink wine. Those things were luxuries, and luxuries were bad. A Cato was supposed to live a pure life, free from the corrupting influences of wealth and pleasure. Despite coming from different backgrounds, Cato and Cassius became close friends. They shared a lot of the same political opinions, especially when it came to their attitudes toward Rome's foreign possessions. If you were lucky, we might say that Cato's political career spanned both sides of the class divide in Roman society. Anyway, once he left office, Cato decided to become a kind of one-man opposition to the regime. But unfortunately, even though he won that election, the next one didn't go so well. He and his ally, the consul Lucius Calpurnius Piso, tried to pass legislation to stop the growing power of the Marian faction, but it failed, and they lost their seats in the Senate. He starts off talking about how much money he saved the Roman state while he was governor of a province. Then he goes on to talk about integrity, specifically how, unlike his opponents, he doesn't accept bribes. He tells the crowd not to vote for him if they think they can get any money out of him. And he says that if he becomes consul, he will crack down on luxury and extravagance and corruption, and then he'll probably cut taxes. And the whole time, he keeps bringing up how he's not related to anyone fancy, and he's just a plain man of the people, you know, not your typical Roman politician. And honestly, it's a really good speech. Oh, it's that speech about virtue, about how when the mob is all like, we want Caesar to be king, and Brutus is like, that's not good. This is a common enough story among Romans, but in Cato's case, he could actually back it up because his ancestral lands were in the original boundaries of the city. That made him a sort of honorary patrician, even though he was technically a member of the lower class, equites. He preferred not to speak in the Senate, mostly keeping his opinions to himself until he had amendments ready to propose. This worked out for him pretty well. He had a reputation as being taciturn and unfriendly, but since he rarely spoke, he didn't make any enemies while still getting stuff done. Also, he set the tone for his political party, which would come to be called the Optimates. Cato got into politics fairly quickly, serving as a military tribune around 68 BC. After that, he went to be a prosecutor, then a tax collector, then a governor. In 74, he was elected praetor, the second highest magistrate in Rome, and in 69, he was consul. All this political experience gave him a good base of support when he ran for the consulship again in 65 BC. It's a great speech, but it isn't Cato's. It's not even from this period of Roman history. The real Cato, who was born Marcus Porcius Cato Uticensis, died 49 BC, long before Shakespeare was born. He is a very different person than the one portrayed by the bard, and he has nothing to do with the assassination of Caesar. But he does help us understand the intellectual currents that were churning through Rome during Caesar's dictatorship and why so many people found him so objectionable. Marcus Porcius Cato Uticensis, or Cato the Younger, as we call him now, was an influential conservative voice in the last years of the Roman Republic. Cato hailed from a family of new money, but in order to make sure they looked respectable, they bought themselves some respectability by tracing their ancestry back to one of the founders of Rome. But this time he had an opponent, Marcus Junius Brutus, whose father had been executed for trying to kill Caesar. He comes across as sincere, honest, frugal. This is a good time to mention that Cato wasn't just an aristocrat. For the rest of his life, he kept trying to keep the Marians from passing new legislation, and he regularly voted against Caesar. Although Cato was the most famous member of the group, he definitely wasn't the leader. Both men came to believe that the Republic could no longer afford to rule over provinces so far away. And Cato wasn't just isolationist, he was also anti-cosmopolitan. That is, he opposed the mixing of cultures and ideas. In fact, Cato started his own philosophical school based on the Greek Cynics, but he adapted it to Roman tastes. So when Caesar became dictator in 49, ending the Republic, Cato was horrified. Even though he wasn't a major player in the Civil War, Cato the Younger is a key figure for understanding the fall of the Roman Republic. Hey there, everyone! Welcome back to the channel. If you want to learn more about the end of the Roman Republic,